We begin today the Gemara towards the bottom of Chav Ches Amud Beis, about 8 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. Rabbi Yehuda Aymechulo. So Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah, speaking about a case where a person has a son-in-law, and the son-in-law is a karev, possible edus to him. So the Mishnah said that if he's nisrachik from him, meaning if the daughter passes away, and now his son-in-law is not a son-in-law anymore, so he's kosher edus. But Rabbi Yehuda says, if even after the daughter died, but there was children, with children here, then the son-in-law remains a karev to the father-in-law, even though he's not technically a son-in-law anymore. The daughter died. That was Rabbi Yehuda's shitta. So Rabbi Yehuda Aymechulo, Amar Rav Tanchum, Amar Rav Tavla, Amar Rav Bruna, Amar Rav, Halachik Rabbi Yehuda. We pass him like Rabbi Yehuda. If there's children, then he's still a relative to the father-in-law. Rav Amar Rav Nachman, Ein Halachik Rabbi Yehuda. We do not pass him like Rabbi Yehuda in this. We do not pass like Rabbi Yehuda. Others brought what Rabbi Barbachana said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan regarding something else. On this thing. That as Darish Rabbi Yossi Glili Darshan, the pasuk where it says Uvasa Lakainim Alavim Velashefet Ashiyah B'Yamim Mehem. When you have any matter that has to be judged, you come to the Kayin, the Levim, the judge that's living in your times. Why does the pasuk have to add Ashiyah B'Yamim Mehem, that lives in your times? Is it possible when you think you're going to a judge that's not alive in your times? Ella, what it's saying is the Yomim Mahem is hinting to halacha. That this is referring to a judge that was your relative, and then you weren't able to use him as a judge. But now by Yomim Mahem, on that day that you want to go to him to use him as a judge, now he's nisrachik, he's not a relative anymore. For example, a brother-in-law that's not a brother-in-law anymore because the sister died, so he's not married to his sister anymore. Or the case we're talking about over here, a son-in-law is not a son-in-law anymore. That's the hint of Yomim Mahem. And on this, Amar Rabbi Barbachana, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Halachik Rabbi Yossi Glili. That we paskin like Rabbi Yossi Glili. So the Gemara brings a story in connection to this. Bnei Chamua de Marukve, the sons of the father-in-law of Marukve, that's a brother-in-law, Kroivim v'nisrach gohavo. They were the brother-in-laws of Marukve, but then Marukve's wife, their sister, passed away, so they're not his brother-in-laws anymore. Also, they came to him that he should be as a judge for them in a din Torah. Amalahu, so Marukve said to his past brother-in-laws, Pasilin lochuladina, I can't be a judge. Amrulei, so they said to him, My daitech, Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason why you say you can't be a judge for us? This is because you hold like Rabbi Yehuda, because his wife Taka passed away, but there were children. So they're still connected. They're still brother-in-laws. It's still a korva because of the children. So is it because of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion? Anan Ma'asina Nigrasa Mimarava, we brought a letter from my Rava, which is from Eretz Yisrael. The En Halachik Rabbi Yehuda. We don't pass like Rabbi Yehuda. And once the wife passes away, we're not brother-in-laws anymore. Amar Lahu, so Mar Ukva said to his past brother-in-laws, you're right, I agree with you. Is it with a certain measure of wax that I became attached to you? Glue, they say there?
Yeah.
Glue, okay. I think it is usually wax, no?
Glued with wax.
Okay. Are we glued together with wax? That after my wife, your sister passes away, I'm still your relative? That I will always be puzzled for you to the din. That's not the case. You're right. How do you read this? Did I read it right? Okay. No. Ella, or maybe it goes on afterwards. What? Okay. Ella says the Gemara, the reason why he didn't want to be a judge for his brother-in-laws, even though he's not a relative of theirs anymore, because we don't pass him like Rabbi Yehuda. It's because I know that you're not going to listen to the psak din that I'm going to say. So a Baal din that you know that doesn't listen to the psak din, you're not supposed to even be a dayan in a din Torah like that. He's not allowed. He's not.
It is happening in Bovel. How can they bring a psak from Eretz Yisrael in Bovel?
No, why not? Why not? This is the halacha. Of course, all the time the Gemara says from Eretz Yisrael that they would send from Eretz Yisrael what the halacha is.
I know we don't do that today. The place of Eretz Yisrael has no psak.
No, we're not talking about a psak din here. The shaila is beneged to whether we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda or not. It's not a specific psak din in a din Torah. It's sent from Eretz Yisrael that the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda. So over here he says the reason I can't be your judge is because you're not going to listen to the psak din anyways. Or from here you see the Pais can bring from here that the person that has a track record, that he doesn't listen to a din Torah, doesn't listen to a psak din, so then you can't be a judge for him. He's not, you don't make a din Torah from him. Okay. Next thing in the Mishnah it said, Oyev zeh shushvinu v'chulu, that if you have a close friend, and this refers to someone that's a shushvin, he's giving you gifts and helping you out with your wedding, then you can't be a judge for him. So now v'kama, until when is this? It doesn't mean forever. It means in that time period, by the chasana. So how long is this? It refers to the time of the chasana, which includes all the Sheva brachas. That time period, you can't be a judge for this chassan. But afterwards, you could. Rabbanan say in the name of Rava, after the first day, after the day of the chasana, so then you're not anymore in that category of being his shushvin, of being his close friend, and you can be his judge again. Hasayna, when it comes to an enemy as well, and which is kol shalei dibra, you didn't speak to someone 3 days because of the hatred, so then you can't be his judge either. So Tana Rabbanan, the Gemara brings what it says in the Braisa, we learn in the pasuk, v'hu loy oyev loy, and he is not his enemy. So we learn from this pasuk, if he's not his enemy, then you idenu. Then you could say edus for him. And v'loy mevakish ra'asai, then the pasuk goes on to say, and you're not seeking, you're not looking for anything bad to happen to him, yedinenu. Only then could you be a judge for him. So here we see that only if you're not an enemy could you be say testimony or be a judge for someone. Rashi points out that that's not the simple pshat of this pasuk. The simple pshat of this pasuk, it's talking about a ritzayach, a murderer, that is going to be chayav galus if he killed someone b'shegig, accidentally. But there's other psukim for that. It says already v'hu lo yisayin lo in another place. So this pasuk, even though the v'hu in the simple pshat is talking about the murderer, it's not talking about an aid or a bezdin. But because it's an extra pasuk, the Gemara is darshaning that v'hu goes on Eidim, and v'lo mevakish ra'asai goes on judges, that you can't be Eidim or judges for someone that's an enemy. Says the Gemara ashkhan sayna. So we have the pasuk regarding an enemy. Oyev min olam. From where do we know that if it's a good friend of yours, then you can't be a judge or an aid? Says the Gemara kri bei. You can read in this pasuk. Read it as follows: that instead of v'huloi oyev loy, that he's not an enemy, read it v'lu huloi oyev loy, and he's not a good friend of his. Then you're edus, you can say edus and it's trusted. And v'loi mevakish ra'asai v'loi tevasai. And it says in the pasuk that you're not looking for his anything bad, but you're also not looking for his good. You're not his good friend. Then you dinenu. Then you can be a judge for him. That's how we understand this pasuk. But the Gemara asks, why are you interpreting the pasuk this way? Midi oyev ksiv. Does it say in the pasuk oyev, one that you love? It says in the pasuk oyev, an enemy. Ella says the Gemara svarahu. What we meant to say is that it's really a svara. We're not putting into the pasuk a different shot, but you compare. It's the same thing. What's the svara? Oyev, my time. What's the reason why for an enemy you can't be a judge or a aid? Mishum de marcheke daite, because you have your mind. You're not thinking good about him. So you're not gonna be honest. So Oyev Nami, the same thing regarding an Oyev, a good friend, Mekarvedaite. You're too close to him, and therefore you're biased. So you can't be an aid or a judge. Now the Rabbanon, in the Mishnah it said that the Rabbanon disagree. The Rabbanon say that Yidden are not le'nechshru Yisrael al kach. Yidden are not suspected about this matter, and therefore the Rabbanon actually, as we'll see from the continuation of the Gemara, they argue b'negeh to Eidos. Regarding Eidos, a oyev or a saina, a friend or a person that's an enemy can still be an aid. You're not going to suspect that he's going to say false testimony. But b'negeh to being a judge, the Rabbanon agree that a oyev or a saina cannot be a judge. So now the shaila is, according to the Rabbanon, Hi loy oyev levelei mevakish ra'asai, the pasuk that we just brought as a source for both, that if you're a friend or an enemy, you can't be not a judge and not an aid. How do they dash in this pasuk? So the Gemara says, Chad l'dayan. So one drasha, when it says v'huloi oyev loy, they agree to Rabbi Yehuda that you can't be a judge. That they agree. And the Rashi explains them. The Rishonim explain the difference is when you come and say eidos. So if you're saying a lie, it's straight out a lie. You're saying false testimony. That we're not choishish for, even if you're a friend or an enemy. But to be a judge on a case that you're a friend or an enemy of the Baal Din, being a judge is already not as clear as a false testimony. Here you have to analyze and be ready to look into things that are in his favor, things that are the opposite. So to be not biased, only then could you honestly interrogate the matter properly and analyze properly. So that's already much more difficult. So here, the Chacham will agree that if you're a friend or an enemy, you can't be a dayan. And we learn from this pasuk. Now, idach, there's two parts of the pasuk, the v'huloi oyev loy and the v'lem balakish ra'aseh. What do they learn of the other part of the pasuk? Kedetanya, they dash in a different drasha, like it says in the Braisa. Amar Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, v'hu loy oyev loyvim loy mevakish ra'aseh. What does this mean? Mekan l'shnei talmidei chachamim shesayin zeh zeh. When you have two talmidei chachamim, they hate one another. She'ein yeshvim b'din kechad. They can't sit and be judges together in a din Torah, because each one is going to look to refute what the other's opinion is, and it's going to take away from their honesty in analyzing the case properly. So they can't be judges together in a din Torah. So the Mevakish Rasa refers to the judges between each other, not in relation to the Baal Din. Moving on now to the next step of a din Torah. So till here we were discussing the who are we choosing as judges. We started with Zabla, how you choose the judges, and then relatives that cannot be judges. But now we move on to the actual din Torah. So how do we interrogate the witnesses? You bring them into a room, and we intimidate them, we scare them, that they shouldn't say false testimony, and the Gemara is going to talk about the details of that. And then you take everybody outside. If there's more than one aid, there's a few aidim, so you start and you leave first the greatest, the oldest amongst them, and then you interrogate him first separately. We say to him, tell us. If it's a money matter, so they ask him, tell us, how do you know that this person, you're testifying that he owes him $1,000? How do you know this? Now, if he answers and says, he told me personally, privately, that he owes money. Or or I heard it from someone else. Someone else told me that so-and-so is chayav this money. So then so then this is worthless. In the first case, when he says that he told me privately, saying something to someone privately means nothing. You might be just saying that for whatever motivation. You don't want to look rich. That could be one reason. You don't want to look rich, so you tell someone, oh, by the way, I owe so-and-so $1,000. So you don't want to be bothered. People shouldn't think you're rich. And in the case where you said, I heard it from someone else, that's what's called Eid Mipieh. I heard from him, that's hearsay. I heard it. He told me. Yeah, okay.
The first one is hearsay.
Well, no, the first one actually means that he himself told you. That person. Yeah, but he's saying a Eidus that he heard from that person himself. That person was Maideh. The Chiddush area here, though, is even though he was Maideh, it's not a serious Eidah. And then when you say you heard from someone else that heard from him, so then it's Eid Mipieh. It's nothing. What?
It would have to be somebody that actually saw the transaction going
Either
on.
that, if you saw the actual transaction, you saw, or the Mishnah brings another example, when he was just Maida, even when you didn't see the actual transaction, in front of us, meaning there were two Eidim, and he called us over and he told us, I want you to be my Eidim. And you're my Eidim that I'm being Maida, that I owe 200 zuz. So then it's not Stam saying something privately which is not serious. Here it's serious. Okay, that's how you interrogate. Now, you bring in the second aid, and we interrogate him. And we interrogate them separately to see if what they're saying will match with one another. If their words then match, so now, then the Bezdin will discuss the matter. Now, what happens now when they come to Paskin? So if two say that the person is Zakai, he's Potter, and only one out of the three says that he's Chayev, so then Zakai. So the majority is Zakai. If two say that he's Chayev, is Zakai, and one says Zakai, so Chayev, we follow the majority that is Chayev. Now what happens is, Zakai, one says he's Chayev, and one says he's Zakai, or Afil Shnayim is Zakin, even if you have a majority. Two say that he's Zakai, and you have a majority that say that he's Chayev. And but now the third judge says, Eini Yedea, I'm clueless about this. So in such a case, that third judge that says that he's clueless, it's like he wasn't part of this Bezdin. The Bezdin has to be a Bezdin of 3. So now you only have a Bezdin of 2. So it's not considered to be a majority because you just have 2. No. So in such a case, Sifu Adayanim. You have to add more judges. And according to the halacha, most Mefarshim, we learned this already before in Gemara, you have to add 2 judges. It's not enough to add it 1 here, you have to add 2. And we had this once before in the Gemara. The Gemara described you have to add 2, and then if those 2 say they don't know, you add another 2 all the way up to 71. Okay, now Gomro is Sadavar, once they come to a conclusion, they have a majority opinion and they want to give out the ruling. They bring back in the Balidinim. Gemara will explain where they were till now, what does it mean they bring them in. And the greatest of the Bezdin says the Psaktin, and he says, Ish pleni ata Zakai, you are Zakai, Ish pleni ata Chayev, and you are Chayev. That's the conclusion and the psak din. Now, Minayim, from where do we know that when a judge leaves from the Bezdin after the psak din, lo yoimar, he shouldn't go and share and say, Ani mezaka. I really was ready to say that you're zakah, that you're potter. But I was in the minority. My friends, they were mechayev. So he's sharing secrets from what's going on behind closed doors. Not allowed to do that. See, so he says, my friends were the majority, and therefore my opinion wasn't listened to. It's regarding this that it says, you're not allowed to be a talebearer and say gossip. And Pasuk says, the person that goes and reveals the secrets of how the Bezdin paskin, this is not allowed. Okay, so the Gemara begins with the beginning of the Mishnah where it says that they intimidate the Edom. What is it that we say to the Edom to scare them not to say false testimony? Rav Yehuda says, this is what we tell them. Pasuk says, Nesiim, there's clouds, ruach and wind, but v'geshemayim, but still there's no rain. Why? Because ish mishal b'mata shaka. Because a person is praising himself by the fact that he's saying lies and he can say false testimony. So it means that if you're going to say false testimony, that brings a curse to the world. There'll be no rain. So that's how he scared them. So Amar Rava says, that's not enough of a scare. Yachli l'meimah, they can think to themselves, and this is an expression people say, Shev shani ava kafna, 7 years there is a hunger, va'abava umna lechalif. But on the doorpost of the craftsman, of someone that's very crafty, he's not going to be affected by this. He'll figure out how to have food for himself. The point of what Rava's question is, if you're only going to scare them by this general curse that the Eibishter brings on the entire world because of false testimony, but it's not intimidating them about what could happen to them personally, so then a person thinks to himself, the whole world in general is going to suffer, but I'll figure myself out. So he doesn't get scared of this. So therefore the Gemara says that there's another pasuk. Ela Amarava Amrinu, what we tell them is, the pasuk where it says, Meifitz, v'cherev, v'cheitz, shanon, a sword, a knife, and a spear that are very sharp, that come and kill. This is basically a plague that there will be. Why is this? Because because a person is saying false testimony against his friend. That's what we scare them with. But again, even as now, this is much harsher than just a lack of rain. This is mamish a plague. So, and Rava says this is enough to scare them. But on this as well, still here the point remains the same. It's taka a bigger scare. It's mamish a plague, but it's not a scare that they will die. There'll be a general plague. So therefore, where they can say, Shev Shani Ava Meisana, even if for 7 years there's a plague, people are dying, but V'inish B'loi Shani Le'shachiv. Nobody dies not in their time. Whoever dies is because his time has come. So even if it's a plague, I'm not concerned. If my time did not come, I won't die. So Ravashi said, Amali Nasam Bar Marzutre, what we tell them is, Amrina Lahu Sadi Shakri, false witnesses, Aigrayu Zili, even those that hire them to say the false testimony, they're despicable in their eyes. They have no, they look down at them, even though they're hiring them and paying them, but they look down at them. The pasuk says, this is a pasuk by Achav, where he was trying to get the property of Novos, and Novos did not want to give him his property, so his wife Izevel says, we'll hire false testimony against him that he's a meirid b'malchus. And it sasays, Vayishivu shnayim anoshim b'nei Belial negdoi, we'll hire 2 people. And here, the pasuk says, they refer to these 2 people as b'nei Belial, lowlifes. Negdoi, against this Novos, v'yidu leimoy birchas alekim u'melech, that he rebelled against the king. So we see that even those that hire the false testimony look down at them as lowlifes. So this is something that's going to intimidate the Edom. So the Mefarshim explain, what's this so intimidating that they look down at them? So 2 things. Either it's because of the embarrassment. Embarrassment is worse than what it said before. What it said before is a klala that will come, but to the world in general. Here's their embarrassment that they're concerned about. Another pshat that the Mefarshim say is, if even the ones that hire these false testimony look down at them, ultimately the word is going to get out. Because now these people said, these are the lowlifes that we were able to hire for false Edom. They're going to talk to their friends about it, and the word is going to get out that they are false Edom, and they're scared of that. That's what's going to scare them.
Why don't you threaten them with
Why what?
Why don't you threaten them with the whole thing of Edom Zaymin?
We don't know if there's going to be Edom Zaymin. Edom Zaymin, they can say false testimony in a way that they know that no Edom Zaymin can catch them. If they say we were there in the middle of the night, that's not a scare apparently. The Beis Yosef adds to the Gemara that the points that the Gemara said before you also scared them with. Elamai, not like it mentioned in the psukim that have quoted. In the psukim it quoted that there will be a curse on the world in general. That's something that don't get intimidated by. But those curses, you have to intimidate them to say that you will die and you will not have any rain in your field. That's the intimidation for them personally. Okay, going on in the Mishnah, it said, Im Amar hu Amar li chulu. And the Mishnah said, you can't say that this guy was maided to me. So it has to be in front of me. In front of us, that is actually. Person that was maided, he called two Eidim and he was maided in front of them. That's how he does. Now the Gemara describes this. What it says in the Mishnah proves what Rav Yehuda said. When a person is maided for something that he owes money, in order to take it serious, it has to be a case where he summons two Eidim to him and he says, come, I want you to be my Eidim for this that I'm being maided. Otherwise, as I mentioned before, he could say, I was maided, I just didn't want to look rich, so I was maided that I owe someone money, but it wasn't serious. A person says, you owe me $100. And he answers, hey, he admits, yep, I owe this money. The next day he says, give me the money that you admitted. And he answers, I was just fooling around with you. You coming and telling me I owe you $100 and I haven't met you, I don't owe you any money. So I played along. I said, I was just fooling around with you. So we accept that taina. Pater, it'll be pater. So here the Gemara gives another svara. The svara I mentioned before says in Rashi that sometimes a person is mighty, doesn't want to look rich. Here the Gemara says the svara that a person is mighty, is just fooling around. Tane and Ami Hachi and Abraisi, we also learned this. Manale biyadcha, amalei hein, and he responds, yes, I owe you the money. Lamacha amalei taneyuli, and amalei, and he says, Mishatani bach, I was just fooling around. Pater, it'll be pater. And not only that, this person that's telling you that you owe him money, so he puts Eidim, he hides witnesses behind a wall, and he says, you owe me money, and he says yes, and then you say to the person that was just maided to you, would you be willing, would you be ready to admit in front of Eidim? And then this person responds and says, no, I don't want to admit in front of Eidim because now I'm afraid. Maybe you're going to force me. Now you have Eidim, you'll force me to Adin Taira. Now the next day, he says to him, no, pay me the money that you admitted. And now he says to him, it's all just a game. Potter. He's still going to be Potter. That's this halacha that Rav Yehuda Marav said, and that we see this point in the Mishnah as well. Now, just to add, it says in the Rishonim, the Rosh, the Rambam, Paskin, he's going to be Potter, but not completely mamish Potter. He's still going to have to swear the shvuah that's known in the Gemara as shvuas heses. When a person is denying a claim against him, this is no different than that case. Someone is demanding of you $1,000 and you say, no, I'm Potter, so he's still going to have to make a shvuas heses, which is any time you're denying any loan or any money that's owed, you have to still make that shvuah. Now, this Braisa we're quoting here concludes with the following statement. Ve'ein tayin lemesis. We will not argue on the behalf of a mesis. A mesis is someone that's persuading someone to serve Avodah Zarah. Regarding such a person, we don't argue for his favor. Now, the Gemara addresses and says, mesis man dechar shmei. What's the pshat of the Braisa that brings up this mesis? Who is talking about a mesis? Arguing on behalf of a mesis. It says the Gemara chasura mechser avachi katani. It was missing here in the Braisa, and we have to learn in the Braisa as follows. That im loy to'an, this that we just said, that when you were maided, that it's not necessarily serious. If the person himself that was maided does not argue this, then ain't plainly. We're not going to argue for him that maybe when you were maided, you were just fooling around. If he himself says this, then we'll accept that. But if he doesn't say it, we're not going to argue on his behalf this, and he'll have to pay because he was maided. However, when it comes to matters of life and death, where you're trying to give someone a chiv misa, over there, even if he does not bring up the arguments for his favor, for his chos, we will argue for him. That's the din by din nefashis that you have to try to save the person from being killed. Now, but then the Braisa goes on to say, but the mesis, the one that persuades someone to serve Avodah Zarah and he's chayiv misa, we're not going to argue on his behalf. Why is the mesis different? From the shir of Rab Chia bar Abba I heard, Shani mesis, the Rachmana Amma, the mesis is different because the Torah says, do not have any mercy on him, do not cover up on him, and we have to do whatever we can to give him his punishment. In connection to this mesis, from where do we know that we're not going to argue on behalf of someone that is coming to persuade to serve Avodah Zarah? We learn it out from the snake when the snake came and persuaded Chava to eat from the Eitz Hadas. Because Rab Simlai said, the Nachash, the snake, could have argued a lot of different things to excuse himself what happened, or to explain that it's not his fault. And he did not argue. He didn't say the Tainus himself. So why didn't the Eibishter argue on his behalf? If he didn't say the Taina, so then the Eibishter does not argue on his behalf because he was a Mesis. He was Mesis Chava to eat from the Eitz Hadas. And some say actually that from here we see that he wasn't just Mesis her to eat from the Eitz Hadas, but he was Mesis her for Avodah Zarah, not to believe in the Eibishter, because we're bringing it in connection to that. Now, what would have been a good argument of the snake to say when the Eibishter asks him, why did you make Chava eat from the tree? He should have said, Divrei Rav, Divrei Talmud, Divrei Mishaymin, that the words of the student, the words of the teacher, who do you listen to? Divrei Rav Shem, you listen to the teacher. The fact that I was Mesis Chava, why was she foolish to listen to me? She should have listened to the Eibishter. Now, Taisus Aveir points out, you can't say that regarding every Mesis. Because by every Mesis, anytime anyone persuades someone to serve Avodah Zarah, the person could turn around and say, I'm not just a Talmud, I'm just a person. Why is he listening to me? Listen to the Eibishter. So Taisa says, no, but by a Mesis, there's actually a Leisesa in the Torah. So the Torah already said that you're not allowed to be a Mesis. So you're also being over on Divrei Arav by being a Mesis. But the Nachash did not have that Isser, did not have that Leisesa. He was just persuading Chava. So he himself wasn't over any Isser. That's the argument he could have said, and he did not say this.
There's a deal that other Mauritian told Chava, don't even touch.
Let's see the Gemara here. So Chizkiya said, "Minayin shekol ha'meisuf gereya." From where do we know that someone that adds is only subtracting? Here from this story of Eitz Hadas. Shanav, the pasuk says, "Amar lekem le'seichlu mimeno." The Eibishter says, "Do not eat from the tree." And then this is the Nachash actually. The snake added and said, "V'lo yisigu bai," and don't touch the tree either. And that's how he brought Chava to eat from the tree. Because what happened, according to Rashi, what he did is he pushed her onto the tree, and she touched the tree, and she saw that she didn't die. So he said, "Oh, you see that you're not going to die." So therefore, so she went and ate from the tree as well. So here we see that he shouldn't add. Okay, so there's just 2 points about what the Gemara is saying here. Number one, if he pushed her to the tree, like Rashi says it, so then it was a highness. That's why she didn't die. So why should she not be afraid of eating from it? This was a highness. It doesn't prove anything. Elamai, what the answer is, she thought that the Eibishter says not to eat from this tree because it's a poisonous tree. Not the einish that you get death from the tree is a natural outcome of it's because it's a poisonous tree. Baruchnis, bagashmis. So therefore the fact, and then she thought that the poison is even if you touch it. And she saw she didn't die. She said that's what changed her. He persuaded her to eat from the tree. Another point the Rebbe talks about in the Sikha in L'chut Sichas Chelik Beis, that we know there's a concept midrabanan. They're constantly adding siyagim, all kinds of things, fences, in order not to be over isam and atayra. So why in this case was it a problem to add a siyag? The Eibishter says not to eat, so we add a siyag, not to touch. So the answer is because Chazal know when to add a siyag. Over here in Gan Eden, there was no reason to add a siyag because Adam Marishin in Gan Eden was on a level of totally in Gan Eden with the Eibishter bottle telekos and markavat Hashem. Over here, there's no reason for any siyag. Over here, adding is not in any way adding to the mitzvah. It's just an added thing, which is the nachash. Creation is adding something to what the Eibishter says. So when it doesn't serve as a siyag, then it becomes gereya. The Gemara brings another source we see in this concept. If you just look at the words in Lashon Kodesh, you can see how if you add, it subtracts. The word amasayim v'chetzi arkay. This is the length of the oren. So amasayim v'chetzi, the word amasayim. If you take away the aleph, it'll be masayim. It's 200. If you add an aleph, just adding an aleph at the beginning of the word, it subtracts. It becomes, instead of being 200, it becomes 2 amas. And similar to Rav Ashi Yama, Ashte Esrei Yiriyes, so the ayin in the beginning of the word Ashte Esrei, if you take out the ayin, so what do you get? Shtei. Instead of Ashte, you get Shtei. So that's, if it would be Shtei Esrei, it would be 12. By adding the ayin, it becomes 1 less, it becomes 11. Okay, going back now to what we were speaking about, a person that's being maida. When do we take it serious and when not? Omar Abaya said, Lo shanu eladama mishata ni boch. When do we say that when he was maida that it's not serious? If on the next day, when he says, "No, pay me," so he says, "Oh, the whole thing was just a game. I was just fooling around with you." And then we accept that. But if he said, "Omar, aval Omar lo yadvarim ha'ilam," he comes and says the next day, "I never admitted to anything." So then hochsa kafran. So then this person is already, we see he's clearly lying here. And he can't even swear about this. He clearly did admit yesterday. He wants to say that what he admitted is not serious. That's one thing. But to say that he didn't admit at all, so then he's not going to be believed. So Omar Rav Papa or Amalei Rav Papa Bar Ade, no, he disagrees with this. This is what was said in the name of Rave. Kol mili dichdi. Anything that's completely insignificant and not important to a person, a person doesn't remember. So someone comes over to you with this nadishkeit that you owe him $1,000, and you say, "What are you talking?" So you play along with him. Actually, you're maida. You're playing along with him. But then he comes back to you a week later. You were maida. He says, "Maida? I was never maida. It went in one ear, went out the other ear. You forgot about the whole thing. So therefore, not hochsa kafren. It's not a case where we say that this person is a liar." So the Gemara brings other stories about this halacha. A person approached his friend, and they were in a room where it had a bed, and the bed in those times had a canopy was closed in with curtains around it. Now in this kilsei, there were Eidim that were hiding there inside. So Amalei, he says to his friend, "Mana li biyadcha, you owe me $100." Amalei hein, he says to him, "Yeah, it's true. He's maida." So now Omar, this person, he wants him to be maida in a way that it should be serious. So he did it and as follows. He says, "Iri v'shachvi laheve alach sadi." People that are awake and people that are sleeping, everybody here, could they all be Eidim? So in other words, the person that's being maida is thinking that even if there's anybody inside these beds, they're probably all sleeping. But really there was Eidim there that were awake. So he says to him, can anybody present be Eidim? Amalei loy? So he says, no, they can't be Eidim. So Rav Kahana said, "Ha'amalei loy." He says, no, they can't be Eidim, so it's not a serious, what he admitted is not serious. Another similar case, he was with his friend in a cemetery, and he hid Eidim inside the grave that will listen to him being Maida. Amalei, and he says to his friend, "Mana li biyadcha, you owe me $100." Amalei hein, and he admits, yep, it's true. And he says to his friend, the people alive here and the people dead here, can they be Eidim? The person that's Maida doesn't expect that there's anybody alive here. It's a cemetery, but really there's Eidim hiding there in a grave. So Amalei loy. So he said, no, I'm not ready. I'm not that there should be any Eidim here. Rav Shimon, Amalei loy. So Rav Shimon said, so we don't take this that he admitted seriously. He said that he wants no Eidim.
I can't, because he wants no Eidim. That means
no. Because in other words, he's just playing around with him. But in order for it to be serious, he has to say Atem Eidai. But if he's saying he doesn't want Eidim, that's because he's Maida, but it's not serious. Not that he's afraid. No. It's showing that it's not serious. But now here the Gemara learns out a new halacha from both of these stories. It seems to be just a repetition of what we said before, but we learn out from here a new halacha. From where we could learn out this that Rav said in the name of Rav, that when is what he admitted serious? If he says here, you should be my Eidim, that Sarach Sheyema Atem Eidai, Lo Yishnaki Ama Loive V'Lo Yishnaki Ama Malve. It doesn't make a difference if it's the borrower himself that admitted that's saying they should be Eidim, or if the Malve, the lender that's demanding the money, says that these people will be Eidim, and the Loive, the borrower that's admitting, was just quiet about it. V'shastik Leiva, the Leiva was quiet about this. And we see it from the story before, because time Adama Leiva Loi. The only reason why we say that when he admitted it's not serious is because the Leiva refused. He clearly said, I don't want any Eidim here. Avali Shasik, if he would have been quiet, even though the Leiva himself never said, I want to be Maida, you be my Eidim. The Malv is the one that said that I have Eidim here. So then Hachanami, that would be when he admitted it, we would take it seriously. Another case the Gemara brings, Ahuda Avakadale Kav Rishu. There was this individual, they referred to him as Kav Rishu, which means that he has a Kav, a measure of documents that he owes a lot of people money. So what happened? Omar, this person said, Man Masik Bi, who do I owe money to? I don't owe money to so many people. Ela plenty. I only owe money to this person and this person. So he admitted. He said two people that he owes money to. So also those people came to Ledine Kamed Rav Nachman. They brought him to the Dintayr Rav Nachman that he admitted that he owes them money. Rav Nachman said about this that when he admitted, we can't take it serious because Adam Osi Shalelas Bias Atzmai. It's common that a person says something that he owes so and so money, and here it could be another reason because he doesn't want to look rich. So this is similar to what we said before. So therefore, we don't take this seriously. Meaning over here in this case, really he owes nobody money. There was people were saying about him that he owes a lot of people money. He owed nobody money. He wanted to say, I owe nobody money. But then he's going to look like he's very rich. So he said, I only owe so and so money. So therefore, we can't take it serious. Now, another case was there was a person that they referred to him as a mouse that lies on all of his coins. Meaning that he's basically a person that's very stingy. He lies on his money and he's not using it. He's not having any benefit of his money. When this person was dying, Omar, he said, Planya, maske bizuzi. So and so, these two people, they are collecting. They're collecting money from me. I owe them money. So what happened? Basta the Shachav, after he passed away, also tavinu liyarshin. So those two people, he admitted clearly before he passed away, he owes them money. They came and they demanded to be paid from the inheritors. Also, they came in front of Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yaisi. So the question is, when he admitted, should we take this seriously? Amalu, Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yaisi said that ki amrin and adam asa shaloi lasbias atzmai. It's what we said before, that when a person admits that he owes people money, that it's not to be taken seriously because he just doesn't want to look rich. That's hani mili michayim. That's only when he's alive. So then for himself, he doesn't want to look rich. Avalacha misa. But this person said this right before he passes away, when he's going to pass away. So then we don't say that. So if he admitted, then it's serious. That's how he does baldin, and the Yarshim have to pay. Now what happened? Paru palga. The Yarshim paid up half of the money that they owed to these people. Now they didn't pay up the other half. Those people came and demanded and took the Yarshim to a Bezdin for the other half. Now here though, they went to someone else for the Din Taira. Also, they came to Rab Chia. And here Rab Chia actually argued on what Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yaisi said. Rab Chia said, he said, you don't owe this money at all. Just like a person could admit, and he's only saying it because he doesn't want to look rich, it could be he's only admitting because he doesn't want his children to look rich. A rich person passes away, and now his children, all the people are knocking on the door and annoying his children because they're the rich people in town, that the father passed away. He doesn't want his children to look rich. So there is a svara even when a person passes away. So now the Yershim heard this. They said to Rab Chia, so then we should collect back the money that we paid, half that we did pay, which was not really right, because there's no proof that our father owed that money. On that Rab Chia said, Kvar hoyre zaken, the elder, Rab Shmuel but Rab Yaisi already paskin differently than me, and what you did, the half that you paid was based on his psak din. We're not going to go back on that half that you already paid. Okay, now continuing regarding this person that's maide. So the Gemara says, Haide bifnei shnayim, if a person is maide in front of two people, and he was maide in the proper way. He was maide, he called two eidim and he says, I'm being maide that I owe money. V'konim yadai. And now they also made a kinyan that on this that he was maide. Then kaisvin. If you make a kinyan for this, then you write it in a star, you write a star that he's maide. But v'imlav, if they did not make a kinyan for this, ein kaisvin. You're not going to write this in a star. And now the significance of whether you write it in a star or not is very big, because there's a very big difference between money that you owe that's not with a document, with a star, or with a document. When you owe money with a star, you can collect from the chasim mishubadim, even properties that were sold off. And now you have also, besides that, you have a real strong raya that this money is owed. It's going to be very hard later to come and claim that you paid it, as long as the malva has that star in his hands. So therefore, even after a person is maida, you can't just go ahead and change the nature of the loan and write it and make it a milva b'shtar, unless there's a kinyan for this. Then you can change. Then there's a new kinyan for this. Now you can turn it into a milva b'shtar. Now, b'fnei shloisha, how about if you're admitting in front of three? Three has already a koyach of a bezdin. It's not just Adam. And v'loy kanem yada. You didn't make a special kinyan in order to allow to write it, to turn it into a milva b'shtar, but it was a bezdin though. What's the halacha here? So Rav Amar Kaisvin. So Rav says that because it's a bezdin, so there's the koyach of bezdin. Bezdin has the koyach of bezdin hefker, and therefore they have the power. If you summon the bezdin, so then even without a kinyan, they have the power to change the status of this loan. Instead of being a milva al peh, it becomes a milva b'shtar, so they can write it. Ravasi Amar, however, Ravasi says no, ein kaisvin. We don't write it without a proper kinyan, the permission of the loivet to write it with a kinyan. So Gemara brings a story that happened. Hava Ovda. There was a case where there was a bezdin there, and v'chashla Rav lahad Ravasi. Even though Rav argued with Ravasi, but Rav himself was chayshish for what Ravasi said, that we're not going to write it down. Amar Ravad Barav said about this halacha, ha oidisa. This halacha we're speaking about, when a person is maide, zimnin kasvina, and sometimes we will write it, then it'll become a milva b'shtar. Zimnin like kasvina. Sometimes we will not write it, even when it's in front of three people, and it'll depend. Knifi v'yasvi, if these three people, they were already there, They were gathered and sitting together. And you came and you were made in front of them. Then, like Kasvinon, then we're not going to write this because you didn't gather these three people for this purpose. They were just sitting there already on their own. So, and therefore, in such a case, they're not considered to be a bezdin for you for this. They're just like Adam. And therefore, you can't write it down. You can't exchange it to become a milva b'shtar. Kanfinu ihu that is. But if he's gathering this bezdin for this purpose, that he's being made, that he owes the money, then kasvinon. Then you will write it down. If he gathered them for this purpose, that means he wants it to be a bezdin. And what does he need the koyach of a bezdin for? In order for them to be able to write it down, so there should be a serious halva now in a shtar. However, Rav disagrees. Rav goes a step further. Even if he gathered these three as a bezdin, like asfina, we still don't write it down. Until he tells them clearly, I want you to be not just as Adim, but I want you to be judges. Then we say that it's with the purpose that it should be written down. Mar Baravashi goes a step further. Mar Baravashi even if he tells them, I want you to be judges for me on this, like asfina, we're not going to write it. The kavi duchte, until there's a place where they are set, where the bezdin sits, and v'sholchu mazmuni leila beidina, and then they summon him to the bezdin, and it's a proper bezdin where they're summoning him and they're discussing this matter. Then we're going to write this down. So Rashi explains, Mar Baravashi holds, only when it's mamish a proper bezdin that they summon him to a bezdin, now it becomes public knowledge. This is something that's meforsim. So then it's already basically like it's written down. The whole mile of a shtar is that once you write it, it becomes public knowledge, and that's the reason why you can collect from mishubadim. Because the buyers can't have any tinus that they didn't know about this loan that was here, because everybody knows about this. So only when the bezdin is summoning and it becomes mamish public knowledge, it's basically like a shtar, and therefore then you write it down. Now another case, the Gemara says, so if you're made about money that you owe, or any metaltalin, any movable item, so as we said before, if there's a proper kinyan for this, then you can write this down. But if there's no kinyan, en kaisvin, then you don't write it. So this is already based on what we said before. Now the question though is, if you're made regarding a piece of land, that the piece of land is not yours, it belongs to someone else, and when you were made of this, there was no proper kinyan made, what's the halacha here? Can you write it down even without a proper kinyan? So Rashi explains the reason why there would be a svara you should write it down is because by metaltalin, even after you made it, you may not want it to be written down because this is a loan, and maybe if you're going to pay later, you don't want you don't want there to be a shtar against you, that it should be hard for you to claim that you paid, or you don't want then that this loan should be collected from mishubadim if you don't have the metaltalin to pay with. But over here by a karka, what is there to be concerned about about writing it? This karka is not mine, so if it's not yours, so then that's it. You have to move out and give it back to the right owner. So why shouldn't you be ready for it to be written down? So but Ameim still argues and says, Ein kaisvin, even regarding karka, you don't write it down, just like metaltalin, unless you can't write a shtar unless you have the agreement of the one that says to write the shtar. Otherwise, the shtar has no kayach b'chlal. But mazitra amar, kaisvin, in such a case, you write it. Because there's nothing to be concerned about. Yeah, in a shtar, not in a shtar. He was clearly made there already in front of Adim, so it's not his karka. So you write it down. Now, regarding a karka, the halach is that we write it down. Gemara brings it Ravina Ikla the Maharia. Ravina found himself in a place by the name of the Maharia. Amalei Ravdimi Baravuna mid the Maharia. Ravdimi Baravuna from that place said to Ravina, metaltali. How about a case where it's metaltalin, that the person is being made that he owes, but v'isna be'inayo, the metaltalin, it's right here. He's holding them in his hands. So when he's being made, so in such a case, when you're being made to something that you have right here and now, so what's the halacha here? Do you write it down right away or not? Over here you could say because he has it in his hands right now, so then let him just give it. Why not just write it down? There's nothing wrong about writing it down, because it's if he doesn't have it in his hands, so then he's using it later on, and he's not going to have it available to pay later, so he doesn't want it to be written down. But if he's holding it in his hands, maybe you should write it down, or maybe not. Maybe it's something that he borrowed, and then maybe he's planning on using it. If it's money, he's planning on spending the money. So maybe we can't write it down right away. So he answered him, Kim Karkoi Domi. So he answered, Ravina answered that this is like karka. If you have it in your hands, you can write it down right away. Ravashi says, no, it's something that he borrowed, given the mechesri gevaina, since it's still metaltalin, something that is metaltalin, and you have to collect it, and you could still use it, and therefore later you may not have it, so you don't want it to be written down, you don't write it down. One more thing over here, we'll finish off with this. There was a shtar that was written that so-and-so was made that he owes, that it was not written in the shtar, that Amma Lono, that the one that was made told us, Kisvu v'chismu v'hovale. write it and sign it and give it to the one that I owe the money to. So Abai and Rava both say, even though it wasn't written in the shtar, that he gave permission to write this down, but we know that he must have given permission. And Hainu the Rish Lakish, this is very similar to what Rish Lakish said. The Omer Rish Lakish said, Chazake and Eidem chaisman al ashtar elam ke nasa gadol. Eidem will not sign on a shtar unless they see that there's adults here, that he borrowed the money, or the adult is selling, that is. You can't sell a property, Rashi here brings, it says in the Gemara Baba Basra, you can't sell your father's property unless you're 20 years old. So Eidem know this. Eidem are not going to sign on a shtar unless the one that's selling the property is a gadol. So in this case as well, Eidem would have not signed this shtar unless the one that was Maida gave permission. So therefore, even if it doesn't say clearly that he gave that permission, we could assume that he gave the permission. Yeah, we know, Eidem know this. Eidem know that you have to give permission before they sign it. Can it not be that could it be that there's a matter that even we don't know, meaning the Gemara is saying, some judges don't even know this halacha, that the person you're writing the shtar for him when he's mighty, he has to give the permission. Not everybody knows this halacha. So you're saying that Dayanim don't know the halacha, but the scribes and the Bezdin and the Eidim that are signing, they know this halacha? So the Gemara concludes and says, Shalino l'safri da Abaye, they asked the scribes by Abaye's Bezdin, v'yadi. They knew this halacha, that you can't write a shtar for someone that's maida unless he gives permission. L'safri de Rava, they asked the scribes by Rava v'yadi, and they knew this halacha. So therefore the assumption the Gemara says is correct. Even if it doesn't say in the shtar that they set to write, we assume that they gave permission, because everyone knows this halacha.